Scaling Up Nation, are you looking for precise liquid level monitoring? Pyxis Labs' new radar level sensor series has you covered. With accurate monitoring up to 50 feet and wireless Bluetooth configuration via the Pyxis app, our sensors offer unparalleled convenience. Plus, LoRa technology enables long-range data acquisition. Experience the future of level monitoring today. Water professionals deserve better tools, and Pyxis Lab delivers. Go to scalinguph2o.com/Pyxis. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/PYXIS. Pyxis, because water professionals deserve better. Hey there, Scaling Up Nation. If there's one thing we know as water treaters, it's that success comes from building strong partnerships. And that's exactly what North Metal and Chemical Company is all about. My friends at North Metal are committed to creating long-term relationships built on trust, reliability, and innovation. Their industry-specific expertise means they understand your challenges and work tirelessly to provide great Northwest products along with a personal touch. With dedicated technical support, North Metal and Chemical Company stands out as a partner who truly cares about your success in the industrial water treatment space. Head over to scalinguph2o.com/north and start building a partnership you can count on. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/north. North Metal and Chemical Company, serving the water treatment industry since 1921. Happy Industrial Water Week, Scaling Up Nation. Trace Blackmore here, the host of the Scaling Up H2O podcast. And of course, the Scaling Up H2O podcast is your official celebration destination for Industrial Water Week. And today is Wednesday, which means we are celebrating Cooling Wednesday. We are smack dab in the middle of Industrial Water Week. And I want to thank all the people out there that posted pictures to IWW25 and hashtag Scaling Up H2O. And you showed us your favorite pre-treatment equipment. You showed us your favorite boiler. Well, don't stop there. Show us your favorite cooling tower today, or maybe it's your favorite chiller. Now, last year, I remember somebody took a picture inside a hyperbolic cooling tower. Now, how many of your friends think that's actually a nuclear reactor when they see a hyperbolic cooling tower? And they were actually very far away in this picture, and they were just a little dot in this big cooling tower. So you don't need to find a huge cooling tower like that. You just need to find your favorite piece of cooling equipment and take a picture of that, hashtag that to IWW25 and Scaling Up H2O so we can all celebrate together. And Nation, as I mentioned, Cooling Wednesday. Of course, cooling brings performance and protection and all sorts of stuff to the things that we do. Can you imagine living in some of the places that we live without the protection of cooler climates? Can you imagine living in the South where I live without air conditioning? Now, many of you know the story of Willis Carrier, a mechanical engineer who invented air conditioning back in 1902. He was working for the Buffalo Forge printing company, and he was having problems with humidity not allowing the paper to load properly and be printed on. So he was trying to find a way to get the moisture out of the air, and that's how air conditioning was invented. I am so thankful to Willis Carrier. Again, I could not live where I live without air conditioning. Of course, I probably could. People did it for hundreds of years, but now we know what we don't have, so now we can't do it. My truck has air conditioning seats. I never had that feature before, but now that I have it, I will never have a vehicle without air conditioning seats. So with that, Thank you, Willis Carrier. We are celebrating Cooling Wednesday because of you. We are seeing people taking pictures in front of their cooling towers, in front of their chillers because of you. And because of Cooling Wednesday, we are celebrating that. So I remember the first time somebody showed me how to use the user interface on a chiller. And up until that time, I was terrified that I was going to shut down the chiller if I started punching buttons. Now, back in the day, it was just a mono screen. There were just a couple of letters and some numbers that you would cycle through with just a handful of buttons to get information about the chiller. Now today, we have beautiful microprocessor computer interfaces that we can use to graphically see what is going on in that chiller. And I know if you've never used that before, if you've never used that user interface, it is very intimidating. And that's why I want you to befriend maybe a chiller tech or somebody that knows how that chiller works, especially that very piece of equipment, and say, can you show me how to use this user interface? Because we need that information as industrial water treaters, because it tells you everything about what's going on in that chiller. And we are able to document a lot of things on our service report from that user interface to make sure that we are properly transferring heat and we don't see any issues. We can also get a history, so if we start seeing changes, we know that something might be occurring and we can fix it before it becomes an issue. Without looking at tools like this, we have to wait until there is an issue, or we have to wait until we open up that chiller, and that might happen once a year, in order to know that there's a problem. And then it's a problem because nobody knew it was a problem. But if you started reading your user interfaces, you would know that there was a problem developing and you'd have it all cleaned up, or you would at least be aware of it and dealing with it while that chiller inspection or before that chiller inspection is taking place. So then when you open up the chiller, you can say, see, that's exactly what I was talking about. It is such a wonderful thing for you that you have such a great water treatment professional doing your water treatment services right in front of you right now, because I told you the thing we were looking at right this very second was happening weeks ago or a month ago or whenever it is. So don't be afraid to use that. And if you are, and if you've never used it before, get somebody to show you how to use it. And then you can start logging temperatures. You can start logging how much energy is being used. And folks, I love to do this. I love to do this on new business. I especially love to do this on new business where we got called in because somebody was having an issue. Specifically in this example, they weren't able to get good heat transfer. They weren't able to cool something they were trying to cool. Well, it's because they had lousy heat transfer, and we recorded how much energy that chiller was using when it wasn't clean, and we continued to record it as we cleaned it up, and now we have a year's worth of data, the same month, virtually the same heat load, and now you can see that there's less energy consumption. Wonder how that happened. Oh, I did that. I cleaned it up. So I know you're paying more for our services than you did the services that created the problem. Well, no wonder, because we actually know what we're doing. But your bonus is you're making 10 times that back on the bottom line, because look how much less energy we're using today versus a year ago today. And that is translating that you're having to buy less energy. Oh yeah, and you're paying a lot more to operate this chiller than you are me. So we should probably renegotiate that contract, huh? Because we're not getting enough on that invoice. No, don't do that. You deserve exactly what you say you deserve, but this is how you prove it. Nation, please learn how to use those user interfaces, because that is the proof in the pudding that you are looking for. Scout Nation, each and every day this week, to help us celebrate, we have returning guests wishing us a happy industrial water week, where here are some guests that are wishing us happy Cooling Wednesday.
Happy Cooling Wednesday, Scaling Up Nation. My name is Juan Meneses with Nalco Water, an Ecolab company. My work with cooling water system include, provide service and water treatment to our customer. But I wanted to share, it was not a funny story, but back in my days, managing a huge cooling towers in my country was really bad pH excursion, low pH excursion, and a full system was a chemical plant, reached maybe 2 or 3 pH. So that was a crazy moment. I think that happened on Friday afternoon. So we were spend all the weekend trying to remediate that situation and increase the pH, adding caustic, adding soda ash to try to mitigate that. And we were able to control the system back in 2 or 3 days, but it was a terrible experience that I don't want it to other people pass through that.
Well, thanks, Juan. And Juan was on episode 405, and that was titled Cooling Water Innovation, Harnessing Wastewater Sustainability. And then he came back for episode 409, entitled A Western Refinery's Journey to Improve Water Efficiency. Here's our next guest.
Happy Cooling Wednesday, Scaling Up Nation. My name is Michael Lowenstein with Q Labs in Cincinnati, Ohio. My work with cooling is Q Labs is the Legionella testing lab. We receive a lot of the samples that you guys take as part of your water management plan, and you send them into a lab. Those would be received at Q Labs. And I guess maybe I'd take a second to give a PSA out there to everybody is that remember that these samples weigh more after you've taken them than they do when you just have the empty bottle. We've had a number of times where folks send in a whole bunch of samples in a cardboard box that was not designed for that, and it falls apart and all your samples spilled. And we can't test them if they're not intact. So remember that if you need help with a sample kit, you can ask us for a sample kit, or at the very least, make sure that your samples are tight and that they're not going to destroy the box. They're not going to spill all over the box when you ship them in.
Well, Nation, if you want to hear more from Michael, you can re-listen to episode 377, The Future of Legionella Monitoring, Strategies, and Technologies. Nation, here's our final guest for today.
Hey, happy Cooling Wednesday, Scaling Up Nation. My name's Mike Standish with Radical Polymers Division of MFG, and I'm very happy to greet you guys today. My work in cooling water is with water treatment additives, mainly polymers for mineral scale control. I would say one of my most interesting cooling stories is, kind of funny to me. I'm scared of heights, and I had the privilege of working for a good long time with a mentor of mine, a guy named Art Friedman or Arthur Friedman, Dr. Friedman, for many years. And he was doing some training with me and took me into Manhattan one time. And we went into the Diamond District of Manhattan to inspect a cooling tower. So I'm like, okay, that's great. And we take this elevator up to the top floor. Okay, no problem. Climb some steps, get up onto the roof. Little bit of a problem, but not a big problem. I'm good. And then he's got this catalog case full of empty bottles that he wants me to take some bottles up and collect cooling water from. It's like, okay, no problem. How do I get to the basin of this cooling tower that's up above us? Turns out you had to kind of step out over the side of the building to climb this ladder that got up to the deck on the cooling tower. I couldn't do it. I froze. I could not do it. And I mean, I've been, shamed before, but truly in utter disgust. Art Friedman looked at me and just shook his head, grabbed those bottles out of my hand, and he's probably 75 at this time, I'm 25 or something. And he jumps on the side of this building, climbs up that ladder, comes back down and, shoves the bottles back in my hand. So that's probably my most interesting cooling story based on my fear of heights. Something I'd like everyone to know about cooling is that it's very complex. I think that it's really important to kind of break things down to understand, what the critical action items are in terms of treatment approaches and addressing the problems that are going on. I think you can break cooling water treatment down into pieces and simplify things and really take a logical approach to your treatment approach. I see the future of cooling. This is way overused, but I do see AI and intelligent computing really bringing a lot over time into cooling by being able to, through logarithms and so forth, being able to take predictive action. Right now, most everything we do is reactive. I think it'll allow us to be a little bit more predictive in our pre-treatment approach. And I think that's probably one of the things in the future that could go down.
Well, thank you, Mike. And Mike's been on this podcast several times, more than I can count, because when I go to events that Mike is at, he will come on the podcast and tell me what he's doing there. Maybe he's representing his company at a trade show. So he's been on multiple times. Most recently, he was on episode 418, where we talked about all things malic acid based around corrosion inhibitors. But Mike was one of my very first guests. He was on episode 14, where he told us how we can take the world of polymers and all of the many terms that we have, and we can break them down to just a handful of terms and really understand polymers. Talking about building a foundation, which is what our theme is this week. That is a great episode to help build your foundation. Mike came back and spoke to us on episode 176 to talk about tagged polymers. And then we talked more about polymers. Mike is the polymer guy on episode 350. So Mike, Michael, Juan, thank you for helping us celebrate Cooling Wednesday. And Nation, of course, you can help us celebrate by making sure you're telling everybody you can about this wonderful industry. You can help us by thinking about your journey. What is water's journey from foundations to futures? What is your journey from foundations to futures? What are all the things that you've learned in your career? And how do you continue learning every day? Now, a fun way I love to learn is from James McDonald's Detective H2O. Nation, here is a brand new episode with a brand new guest voice. Here is the case of the unwanted foam party.
Welcome to Detective H2O, the case of the unwanted foam party. It was a rainy Wednesday, and the rain was pouring down hard, hammering against the windows of Herbert Henry Oxidaine's office. For Detective H2O, PI, CWT, this was the perfect weather. Rainy days, whether weekdays or weekends, always put him in a good mood. He sat at his desk, admiring his professionally framed periodic table on the wall, testing himself on the atomic numbers of each element. Just as he reached rhodium, 45, the phone rang once, twice, 3 times. He finally picked up and said, "Detective H2O here, the best water treater this side of the Ohio, solving water problems drop by drop. What you got?"
Detective H2O, this is Terry Hogan, head engineer over at Twin Rivers High Rise. We got a serious problem.
I see. What exactly is going on?
Foam! Foam everywhere! I've got a winter wonderland in July.
Foam, you say? Where is it coming from?
The cooling tower. It's spilling out under and over our sound wall, and it's into our parking lot. You know, our luxury parking lot with Bentleys and McLarens? The foam hasn't reached them yet, but it's not for lack of trying.
Well, Terry, try to protect the property as best you can. I suggest a squeegee, a hose, and some rubber boots. I'll see if the clunker will start and get there as soon as I can. I've got my own rubber boots in the back, so I'll help when I arrive.
That's mighty nice of you, Detective H2O. Get here as soon as you can.
Before leaving, Detective H2O searched his files on Twin Rivers luxury high-rise. Ah, I thought I remembered this one. This used to be one of my accounts until they went with a low-priced company. I wonder why they called me instead of Mr. Lowbid, he said facetiously. He hopped into his weathered old blue Ford, turned the key, and hoped it would start. It did, and he was on his way. Detective H2O pulled up to the gate at Twin Rivers Luxury High Rise, came to a complete stop, and waited for the security guard to come out of the gatehouse. He recognized the guard from when he used to have this account. They exchanged pleasantries, and the guard radioed Terry for approval to let the detective in.
Let him in? Of course! Send him down to the parking deck and tell him to park right next to the cooling tower. Also, tell him if he doesn't remember how to get here, just follow the foam.
The gate opened, and the guard waved Detective H2O through. The tower was located inside the sub-parking deck, one of the few indoor cooling towers Detective H2O had serviced in his career. He chuckled, thinking, "You never know where engineers and architects will put equipment. That's what keeps the job interesting." As he pulled up, he saw Terry in his best pair of rubber boots and a squeegee. Most of the foam had been dealt with. Detective H2O parked his jalopy, put on his boots, and grabbed a squeegee to assist as he greeted Terry.
Thanks for coming, Detective. And as you can see, we've got most of the foam taken care of. And the good news is, no one was parking in the spots that were foamed out.
That is good news. The detail work on some of the cars here is worth twice what my beater is.
Here's the bad news. The tower is off and the building is starting to heat up. I'm already getting complaints from the tenants.
Let's figure out how to get that tower back on without it looking like another foam party. Terry took the detective into the mechanical room where the chiller and cooling tower controller were located. Detective H2O took a quick inventory of what was on hand and found they were pumping a quat in as a biocide and had a bromine feeder as the oxidizer. He also noticed a drum of foam begone in a rack that was about half full. "Terry, how much foam begone do you use?"
I don't touch any of that stuff in here. I think my water treatment company uses that.
Detective H2O thought it was unusual for this much defoamer to be on hand, but he had learned that you have to work with the facts given, at least until you can prove they may not be facts. Detective H2O checked out the controller set points. He noted that the quat was being fed once per week at less than half of what the proper dosage should be. He also noted that the brominator was activated weekly for only 3 minutes. Detective H2O then proceeded to look inside the brominator and saw it had tablets in the unit. "Terry, when was the last time the other company was here?"
Here's their last service report. A little over a month ago is when they were here.
The detective knew that the bromine tablets would not have lasted that long. He asked, "Are you sure none of your guys fill this unit?"
I'm pretty sure, but let me ask.
Terry got on his radio and said,
Terry to Tommy, Terry to Tommy. Come in, Tommy.
Tommy, the assistant engineer, came on the radio, and Terry asked him to report to the mechanical room. When Tommy entered, Detective H2O asked him if he knew anything about the tower control equipment. Tommy replied in the affirmative and told the detective that he fills the brominator on a weekly basis. Detective H2O then looked at the drum of foam begone and asked Tommy if he ever used the defoamer. Tommy again replied in the affirmative, adding he pours in about a gallon or so every Wednesday morning. Except for today, it was his anniversary, and he took his wife to breakfast. Detective H2O started putting all the pieces together, an activity he loved doing. He thanked Tommy and ran a few calculations, another activity he loved doing.
Well, Detective, what do you think is going on? And can we turn the cooling tower back on soon?
The detective finished his calculations and turned to Terry. "Terry, I think so, but we need to make a few adjustments first. Our first action is to put some defoamer into the system. I typically don't like adding defoamer because it treats the symptom and not the cause, but we have an issue right now that we need to get the tower back on without refoaming the parking lot. I calculated we need about 98 ounces to properly dose the system." Detective H2O measured out 98 ounces of foam begone and had Terry turn the recirculation pump back on. Detective H2O poured the defoamer directly into the tower where the suction was. Terry looked scared, but Detective H2O told Terry just to wait a moment. Like clockwork, the foam started subsiding.
You fixed it, Detective!
No, Terry, I just put the foam on hold for a while. We still have not fixed the root cause.
Root cause? What is it?
It's the main reason for an issue, but that is not important right now. Knowing Terry was a Leslie Nielsen fan, he would surely get the airplane reference. Terry grinned. Sometimes all it takes is a little math. Detective H2O explained that both biocides were being grossly underfed. He then took Terry to the cooling tower to show him how slimy it was. He went on to say that even though quaternary ammonia-based biocides are foamers, the root cause of the issue was a system not being treated with biocide at the recommended dosage levels. The detective explained, "Your main foam issue happens right after the brominator comes on, but the bromine isn't what is foaming. There is just not enough being added to get the system clean. You see, when you break down biofilm, it releases polysaccharides into the water. This acts like soap and can cause foam. So we need to feed the proper amount of biocide to both clean it up and then keep it clean." After getting permission to reprogram the controller, Detective H2O had the brominator feed daily at the high end of the recommended label dose. He then explained that once the system was cleaned, he would turn the dose back down and monitor the system using dip slides.
I remember what dip slides were. You used to use them when you took care of this account.
I've been meaning to talk to you about that. You left me for a lower price. Do you now see what lower price gets you?
Well, I guess I do. I thought I was saving the owners money. What I really did was cause everyone here a real headache. Will you take us back?
Of course I will. But I will have to charge you for the service visit today, since we don't have an active contract in place. Two months later, the phone rang. One time, twice, three times. Detective H2O here, the best water treater this side of the Ohio. Solving water problems drop by drop. What you got?
You sure are consistent, Detective. This is Terry Hogan. I just wanted to tell you that no foam parties have been present since your initial visit. I had to explain to the owners why our water treatment budget doubled, but when I explained the whole story, they were surprised you didn't charge us triple.
Smiling, the detective replied, "I charge what the math says, Terry. Nothing more, nothing less."
Well, you're worth it. And I was hoping I could put your brain to work again.
What you got?
The parking deck walls look as clean as they did when they were brand new. Well, until you get about a quarter of the way up. All the foam and water we were spraying cleaned up the walls. At least a quarter of them. The problem is, we're getting complaints about how dirty the other 3/4 look. Any ideas?
Well, that tower will not foam on my watch, and if you follow my recommendations. So I suggest you put your favorite pair of rubber boots back on and make friends with a pressure washer.
I was afraid you'd say that. And Detective, thanks for not making me feel bad about canceling your contract last year and being here when we needed you.
Terry, I'm always graceful when I come in second. That way I may get a chance to be back in first. In the underbelly and penthouses of the metropolis of Waterville, where the boilers percolate and cooling towers fog, there is one man who works tirelessly to end corrosion, stop scale, fight low-life microbes, and conserve water. That man is Detective H2O, best water treater this side of the Ohio, solving water problems drop by drop.
All right, Nation, I know you have no idea who that guest voice was, but go ahead on our LinkedIn, see if you can guess who that guest voice was. And of course, we're going to reveal every guest voice on Friday's episode after we play Friday's release of the brand new Detective H2O. I sure love celebrating Industrial Water Week with all of you. Thank you for tuning in to the podcast this week. Thank you for celebrating Industrial Water Week with us. Of course, you can celebrate by hashtagging your favorite piece of cooling equipment to IWW25 and scaling up H2O. The cooling tower, the chiller, they're the workhorses of the industrial water treatment field, and we are going to celebrate all things cooling today. Now, tomorrow we are celebrating Wastewater Thursday. You are not going to want to miss it. Preparing for the CWT exam can be daunting, but our Certified Water Technologist Prep course makes it easier. With valuable study tools and a 100-question practice exam, you'll be ready to tackle that test with confidence. Visit scalinguph2o.com/CWT prep to sign up today.